Cambodia was a land of temples, monks, and peace, a kingdom where silence was sacred and memory was a prayer. Then, one man decided to erase it all. He smiled softly. He spoke gently. And behind that calm voice, he planned the deaths of 2 million people. He believed he could restart time, begin again from nothing. No money, no families, no gods, only obedience. His followers called him Brother Number 1. History remembers him as Pol Pot, the man who murdered a nation to build paradise. Before we continue, if you've stayed with this story so far, thank you. It means a lot. These films take weeks of research, writing, and editing, and your support keeps this channel alive. So if you haven't yet, click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Every watch, every comment, every share helps us keep uncovering the untold sides of history. And it's thanks to you that we can keep creating them. Now, let's return to Cambodia and the man who tried to rewrite time itself. Before the world called him Pol Pot, he was a boy named Saloth Sar, born in 1925 in a quiet Cambodian village surrounded by rice fields and Buddhist shrines. His mother prayed, his father farmed, and the young boy spent hours in temples, learning that peace was the highest virtue. But peace, for him, became a habit, not a belief, a mask he would one day weaponize. In his teens, Sar left the monastery and entered the French-controlled capital, Phnom Penh. There, he saw 2 worlds colliding: gilded villas for the French elite and barefoot locals sweeping their streets. It was his first lesson in inequality, and it cut deep. He earned a scholarship to study in Paris, where he discovered a new gospel, not the words of the Buddha, but of Karl Marx and Joseph Stalin. The idea was intoxicating, that history could be erased and rewritten, that suffering could be engineered away. In Paris cafes, he listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his voice was soft, persuasive. He told his peers that Cambodia could be reborn if it destroyed everything that made it weak. To them, he sounded idealistic. To himself, he sounded divine. When he returned home in the early 1950s, he was no longer the monk's son from Kampong Tom. He was a missionary of revolution. He taught history by day and plotted by night. His lessons spoke of freedom, but his heart worshipped control. And in those quiet classrooms, among chalk dust and whispered prayers, the foundations of the Khmer Rouge were born. The boy who once knelt before the Buddha had found a new god, power. When Saloth Sar returned from Paris, he found his homeland fractured, half ruled by kings, half by ghosts of empire. The French had gone, but their shadow lingered: poverty, corruption, inequality. He believed Cambodia could only be cleansed through fire. By the early 1960s, he had a new name, Pol Pot. It sounded plain, harmless, almost forgettable. That was the point. He vanished into the jungles of northern Cambodia, where exiled revolutionaries were hiding. There, he gathered farmers, teachers, and monks who felt abandoned by their government. Around campfires, he preached equality, but demanded obedience. His followers listened as if hearing prophecy. "The city is disease," he told them. "The countryside is purity." He promised to erase the corruption of modern life. No money, no classes, no foreign influence. A new dawn, he said, built on rice and blood. The movement grew. In the shadows, Pol Pot's charisma became doctrine. His voice, calm, almost tender, turned orders into commandments. Those who hesitated disappeared. Soon, the Khmer Rouge wasn't just a group of rebels, it was a religion without mercy. When American bombs began falling across the Cambodian countryside, villages turned to Pol Pot for protection. He offered them safety and indoctrination. For every crater the U.S. left behind, the Khmer Rouge filled it with a recruit. By 1975, they surrounded Phnom Penh, an army of believers armed not just with rifles, but with the conviction that paradise demanded purification. On April 17th, the capital fell. Soldiers entered the city not as liberators, but as executioners of a new idea, Year Zero. Cambodia would begin again from nothing. On April 17th, 1975, the day Cambodia was reborn, Phnom Penh celebrated. People lined the streets cheering for the Khmer Rouge soldiers marching in. They thought the war was over. They thought peace had returned. By nightfall, the cheering stopped. The city was ordered to evacuate. Hospitals, homes, schools emptied in hours. Mothers carried their sick children through the heat. The elderly collapsed on roads littered with abandoned possessions. The Khmer Rouge said it was temporary, that American bombs were coming, but the bombers never came. The order was never rescinded. Phnom Penh was erased. Across Cambodia, cities became ghost towns. Millions were forced into the countryside to start again. Money was banned. Religion was forbidden. Family ties were broken. Children belonged to the state. Pol Pot called it Year Zero, a return to purity, a society without past or memory. Fields became prisons. Hunger became law. Every village had its watchers, its whispers, its grave. Those who spoke too softly were suspect. Those who spoke too loudly were gone by morning. At night, the screams carried through the rice fields. Prisoners were taken to places like Tuol Sleng, S-21, a former high school turned torture camp. There, thousands were interrogated and photographed before execution. Out of 14,000 souls who entered those gates, only 7 walked out alive. The rest were sent to the killing fields, graves so shallow that rain still brings up their bones. Pol Pot watched from afar, believing he was building a perfect world. His followers called the killings cleansing. He called them necessary. In just 4 years, up to 2 million people, a quarter of his nation, were gone. Yet the regime kept records of every death, as if history itself were a ledger to be balanced. He had succeeded in erasing everything, except the evidence of his own madness. By 1978, Pol Pot's perfect world was collapsing. The rice harvests had failed, the people were starving, and the paranoia that once targeted enemies now turned inward. He began purging his own revolution, soldiers, ministers, even lifelong comrades. Entire villages vanished overnight, accused of treason against an idea that no longer made sense. On the eastern border, his fear turned toward a new enemy, Vietnam. Convinced the Vietnamese were plotting invasion, Pol Pot ordered mass executions along the frontier. Over 100,000 Cambodians, soldiers, families, children, were slaughtered. But paranoia cuts both ways. On Christmas Day, 1978, Vietnam struck back. Tanks rolled across the border. Within 2 weeks, Phnom Penh fell, the same city he once emptied with pride. Pol Pot fled into the jungle with a handful of loyalists. There, among the ruins of his revolution, he tried to rebuild. But the jungle had turned against him. His followers starved. His generals betrayed him. Still, He refused to believe it was over. Even as millions of bones surfaced from shallow graves, he told reporters, "My conscience is clear." For nearly 2 decades, he hid along the Thai border, protected by the very world powers that once condemned him. China armed him, Thailand sheltered him, and the United States, desperate to counter Vietnam's influence, looked the other way. In 1997, Pol Pot's final allies turned on him. He was arrested by his own men, tried not for genocide but for betrayal. A year later, as he awaited transfer to international court, he died in his sleep. No monument, no trial, just a pyre in the jungle, the smoke of a man who tried to burn history itself. Today, Cambodia still lives with the echo of Year Zero. In fields outside Phnom Penh, the rain still brings bones to the surface. Skulls stacked behind glass stare out from the killing fields, silent witnesses to a time when memory was a crime. For survivors, justice came slowly, decades too late. The Khmer Rouge tribunal convicted a few old men, but for most the pain remains unspoken, passed down in silence to their children. Pol Pot's dream of purity ended in mud, blood, and starvation. Yet, his lesson endures, that the most dangerous ideas often begin as promises of perfection. He wanted to create a nation without inequality, and instead created a kingdom of ghosts. In the end, he didn't destroy time. He only proved that memory cannot be erased, because every survivor carries it, every photograph remembers it, and every grave still whispers his name. This is the story of a man who tried to build heaven on earth and discovered only hell.